All right, this is Johnny Moeller. You are listening to Talking Blues. I'm a guitar player in Austin, Texas, working with all types of different people. So check it out.
What I find fascinating about Texas is there's a lot of great guitar players who come from Texas.
Yeah.
And a lot of great guitar players who come from Texas mention a lot of other Texas guitar players.
Oh, yeah.
And when I read things about you, it tends to have a lot of Texas guitar players as your influence.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Tell me about
Very
that.
much. Well, I grew up in Dallas, or, north of Dallas in Denton. And there was, always great. Anson Funderburg was my, early hero. And I think I was 15, an older friend drove us down to Dallas, and I somehow walked into the club, and Anson and Sam were playing. I could hear the harmonica down the street, and I was with like two or three other friends that were like 15-year-old kids, and this older guy, he seemed old. He was probably 24. Like, you know,
Ancient.
now that I'm 52, 53, it's like, wow. But he drove us down there, and they went to see like a free outdoor concert of this guy Eric Johnson, who's another famous Texas guitar player. But
Great guitar player.
yeah, he's phenomenal. And I had been into those kind of things before, but by the time I was 15, I was like blues. That was all I was into. And I think I had a couple of those early Anson records and things like that. Anyway, so we get done with that concert, and he goes, "Hey, well, if you guys want to go down on Greenville Avenue, there's a bunch of clubs down there and bands playing." So we're walking down the street, and I could hear the harmonica, and I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, what is this? Like, this is what I'm looking for." And I walked in. It was a Monday night. There was like 8 people in the club, and Anson and Sam are playing. And I just sat in front of Anson. My friends just kept walking. They were like, "Ugh, I'm not into this." And I think it's we had Mike Judge was playing bass in the band, and had a great band. And I just sat in front of Anson and Sam, and just was like up 2 feet, 3 feet from watching it. And I was like, "Wow, that's how you do it!" Like, you know,
Okay, if we go back a little bit, you started playing guitar around 8 or 9, is that correct?
no, no, that's probably about 12. Maybe 12. My dad bought me and my brother a, a drum kit and a funky old guitar. And somewhere I remember we had a tape and a photo of us just banging on them. It was it was noise. But and then my parents split up, and my dad had a bunch of old records. He had the Rolling Stones and all that stuff, but he also had a bunch of like Slim Harpo, Jimmy Reed. My dad grew up in Fort Worth, and I think a lot of those guys would actually play in the 60s. Fort Worth, there was a thing called the Jacksboro Highway, and there were a lot of bars and bands, and a lot of blues guys would play out there. And so my dad he was into that, that stuff. And somehow when my parents had split up, me and my brother, the records came with us. So we were digging through them, going, "Oh wow, this is cool."
Do you remember what would have been the first blues album that just grabbed you?
Yeah. So we were living in Denton, Texas, which is like 40 miles north of Dallas and Fort Worth. It's a college town, and I would ride my bike. So then I started getting into these records. I'm going, "Oh, I like this blues thing's cool." And I'd ride my bike across town over by the North Texas campus, the university campus, and they had a Sound Warehouse there. And I still remember it. I still have the record. I might be able to find it here in a minute. I'll show it to you. But I rode my bike across town, and I bought this Lightning Hopkins record. It just looked cool. And I remember getting home and going, "Oh my God, I've discovered something."
Another Texan.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Another, yeah, famous blues Texan guitar player, singer extraordinaire.
And so
So
you listen to this, are you thinking I want to learn how to play like that?
I did. I did. It's funny. I can remember everything. It was like summer. It was hot. Summer in Texas, like sunny day. I remember going, "Wow, this is," you know,
And so, from that moment, are you thinking, I want to play the blues?
yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. And I remember, in high school and junior high, it was funny because I just went back to Denton with Marcia Ball, and I haven't played there. I don't know, maybe. I mean, since I was a kid. And this is like a month ago. We
Right.
played up there, and we had the whole afternoon off because we were in Dallas the day before. So I drove around with Marcia and Eric, her sax player, all afternoon, like going, "That's the Piggly Wiggly I worked at. That's that's the junior high school I went to. I learned how to smoke in that parking lot, cigarettes. There's
Wow.
my high school. My parents met at that high school. I mean, so it's like it
Memory
was really
lane.
funny going back there. And so I remembered that house. We drove by that house I lived in where I rode my bike, and I go, man, I'll never forget riding my bike back to here with that Lightning Hopkins record and going, wow, look at this.
Okay, so you think, well, this is what I want to do. And then you go see, a few years later, you wind up seeing Anson Funderburg with
Yep.
Sam Myers.
Yeah,
Was that one of the first times you saw a live performance of the
it
blues?
was. Yeah, for sure.
And Anson being one of the greatest. But what
Oh,
did
yeah.
that do to you?
It,
How did it affect you?
for one thing, it was like all those things you hear, cool, quirky blues things, but you can't really figure out, because it's not anything really anybody can teach you, like a teacher. I'm sitting in front of Anson, and I swear there's probably like three or four things I just went, that's how you do that. Like I'm watching him and going, that's how you make that chord, or that's how you play that thing. So it was life changing, for sure.
The thing I notice when I watch him play is just how tasteful his guitar playing
He's
is.
it still is. I mean, it's like I still
Yeah.
do that. I still like when I hear him, I'm going, there's so much to learn there. Like, and yeah, taste and economically, like saying more with less. Playing less but saying way more. I'm like, man, I still got to be watching him. It's the guy. Yeah.
For sure. But as a 15-year-old, are you thinking, like, do you get that it is less is more? Like, I can easily imagine it going the other way. At
It
15, you want to cram in as many notes as possible, or some
maybe
do.
maybe if I could have, like, I'm not really like some people, like instantly have this technique where they can play fast. Like
Right.
I can't really shred or like, so maybe it just fit me better. Like I was like, okay, this is my kind of thing here. I could do this. Like I was into Jimmy Page and Hendrix and all those guys before. I think I got into the Beatles first. When I was probably 10. It was around the time when John Lennon was killed, and they were playing Beatles all the time. Or 1980, and it was on everywhere. And my mom had that Double Fantasy record. It just come out, and I remember going, "Wow, this is what I want to be. This is like so cool." Then you discover Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath and all that kind of stuff. And I remember riding down the street with a buddy of mine, and we were riding, and I had seen a Les Paul, like a fake black Les Paul in a pawn shop. And I was like, man, I want one. I want to get that. And I remember telling him that, and I remember him laughing, going, "You can't do that. Like, no, you're crazy." Like, so eventually, I got one and started playing. But yeah, the blues thing. So then I kind of, by the time I saw Anson, it was like I had got that Lightning Hopkins album. I'd bought a couple of those Anson records and a bunch of other stuff, T-Birds, and I had the bug. I was all in.
Okay, so the other thing, when I think about you playing, I often think about your rhythm work.
Hmm.
Like, not that I don't love your lead work, but
Yeah.
your rhythm playing is, to me, more distinctive, and
Oh, thanks.
always impressed by what you do. Where does that come from?
Well, like when you see like Anson, definitely he plays great,
Hmm.
rhythm. It's always I just kind of I don't know. You know, a big part of it was I think I remember buying a bunch of those records and then getting into like bands like Booker T and the MGs, the Meters, and all the guys that play with like Jimmy Reed and those kind of things. Like there's great rhythm going on behind. You know, yeah, a lot of people miss that. They don't.
Yeah.
They just go straight to the great solos or whatever. And it's always been important. I always like to be a part of the rhythm section, part of you know
Like even
that.
Stevie
So
Ray Vaughan. I mean, everybody talks about what a great guitar player he is, which he
yeah,
was.
yeah,
But his rhythm work was just phenomenal.
yeah. Well, you know what's funny? He's great at for him, like his style, like backing himself up.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember Kim telling me, he was talking about when he first started the T-Birds with Jimmy. He was running around with Stevie and Doyle Bramhall Sr. And I think they were all kind of entertaining the idea of like, man, we should get a band. Like, these guys are all in their early 20s, in Austin. And he said they went out and saw Jimmy play with Jimmy's band at the time. I think it was called Storm. And he goes, I saw Jimmy, and it was the same thing. He goes, well, that's the guy. He can play rhythm. He knows how to back up a harmonica player, you know. Whereas Stevie's probably great at what, playing, backing himself up and doing his thing and playing the rhythm. But he knew, he was like, oh, that's the guy I need to be working with. Like he knows how to play rhythm, like behind a singer, harmonica player guy like Kim.
And I presume Jimmy was also a great influence on your playing.
Oh, huge, yeah, huge. Yeah, it's funny. Speaking of the same time, and or right before that, right before seeing Anson and going down there and all that, my parents were real on and off, and my dad would be gone. You know, out of the scene, and me and my brother were like 13, 14-year-old kids in 1983, and we would get our hair growing out. Like where we thought, like we're oh man, we're almost like Jimmy Page, and my dad would show back up and go, "We gotta go get you guys a haircut," and we'd both be like, "Oh no!" And he had a barber, it was a buddy of his that played guitar, and he was a blues guitar player, and he was actually the first guy that kind of got me going that way. Be cutting our hair, and we're talking about guitar, and I'm like all into that. And he said, "Yeah, do you ever get into blues?" I'm like, "Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I know that Stevie Ray Vaughan guy's awesome." And he goes, "Yeah, you ought to check out his brother and the Fabulous Thunderbirds. Like that's really the stuff to check out." And so I did, from there. And by the time that was a big moment. It was like, oh man, like this is perfect, you know.
So, very early on, are we thinking that this is what you will do for your life? That you were going
Yep,
to be a blues musician?
yep. That was all I thought of. Yeah, at that moment, it was like, well, this is what I'm doing, you know. Well,
And
and
did you have any sense of what that was or would be?
not really. Uh, it's funny how things all come together. Like I was telling you when I was in Denton a few weeks ago, I was telling Marcia, going around town, and these things all just kind of came together. There was a guy named Pops Carter. He was like the local blues guy in Denton. He'd wear a suit, and I don't know, he was probably 65, but he seemed like he was, he was probably 55, like my age. And I'm going, man, look at this old guy, like, old blues guy. And he wore a suit, and all the college kids knew him. And he had like a band of, the guys weren't really blues guys. They were kind of more like music school, like fusion jazz guys that backed him up. And me and my brother and our buddy Paul Sides, who we grew up with, and we would go see him play, and we're going, man, we could do better than that. Like we know that song. That's a BB King song, And finally, Paul had a lot more nerve than I did, and he went and asked him if he could play. Like, man, I want to play, and they got him up, and Pops liked him, and so we kind of got a band, me and my brother and Paul with Pops, like we were backing him up, and we did that for probably a year or two, just around Denton, North Texas area, and then when we all got old enough to start driving, we would we would go to Dallas and Fort Worth, and you know, started meeting more people.
What kills me now that you mention it is that so your dad buys you a guitar and a drum set for your brother many,
Hmm.
many years ago, and you're a guitarist and your brother's the drummer.
Yeah, I know. Isn't it
And
weird
you
how
both
those
follow
things?
this thing.
Yeah,
And most people probably wouldn't or couldn't. And somehow that thing changed
we
your
must
life.
be crazy. Only some people are crazy enough to keep doing this.
Okay, so you work with Pops, and then what happens? You moved to Austin. Is that around like after
Well,
school?
I moved to Dallas once I got out of high school for like a year,
Right.
and I'd met another buddy of mine, Mike Flanagan, at the pawn shop in Denton, which is where I bought my first really good guitar,
Which
and
was?
which is it was a Fender Strat, like a reissue when they started making the '80s reissues. You know, they kind of made them like they were in the '50s or '60s, and I remember I worked at a Piggly Wiggly grocery store, and I went in there and I talked to Mike, and he had an Antone's T-shirt on, and I was like, "Wow, you've been there? You know how cool." And he's like 5 years older than me, so he was like, "Yeah, I went down there last week, and I was hanging out. I saw Hubert Sumlin and Wayne Bennett and James Cotton." I'm like going, "Wow, I got to see this. I got to go there." And so I met him, and we started hanging and playing together too. Like him and Paul and my brother and I, we all kind of were a little Denton blues gang. And then when I got old enough to drive, my dad lived in Austin, so he kind of moved all over. He was in New Orleans for a while, and by this time he was in Austin. And so we started driving, and me and my brother would drive down to Austin and see our dad in the summer. And he took us to Antone's. So we were like, "Man, we're all into blues." And he's like, "Well, Antone's is down here. We'll go out there." We go in there. Little Charlie and the Nightcats are playing there. It's like a Tuesday night, probably 20 people in the club. And, you're hanging out with my dad. He's like drinking beer, and he kind of, we meet Clifford. And my dad's like, "Man, you gotta check out my boys. They're all into blues. Like they play guitar and drums. You gotta check them out." And I'm like, "Oh wow, I can't believe I'm here." And next thing I know, it's the end of the night, and Clifford gets on stage and calls me up there. He goes, "Let's get this kid up here. Well, yeah, come on. Where's little Johnny?" And he started, but way back then, calling me Johnny Dollar. He go, "Johnny Dollar, come on, get up here." And I got up. I was so scared, and I'll never forget, man. Little Charlie gives me the guitar, and then Rick leaves the stage, and he gives Charlie the harmonica, and Charlie starts playing
Yeah,
like
he's amazing.
phenomenal harmonica. And I'm just like going, "Oh my God, I'm hanging on for dear life." But that was my first time, and blew my mind. And Clifford was so cool from then on. He at the end of the night, he goes, "Hey man, whenever you're down here, you guys are totally welcome." And he gave me his card. I'll never forget it. It had his like business card, and on the back he wrote like, admit any time, and
Wow.
put it and signed it. CJ Antone. Let him in. So anytime we came down, then me and my brother could get in. Like we had the card. So we would get in, and I met several times later. I met a guy named Hook Herrera, and he had some gigs in Austin. And Mike Buck, early T-Birds drummer, was on drums. Alex Napier. So I started coming down and playing with those guys too. So and eventually moved down probably when I was 20 to Austin.
But then there's no doubt that this is what you're going to be doing.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm like, because I was in a band actually in Dallas called the Wee Bats, and they played. We were actually making money, like played 5 nights a week all around Dallas, Fort Worth, and I was like, "Wow, you can do this. You can make money playing guitar." Like, okay. So,
How did you hook up with Daryl? How does that happen?
well, I'd seen Daryl go see us, so me and my brother and Paul and Mike, we would all go down to Dallas and go to these blues jams. This guy Hash Brown, he ran these like jams every Thursday, and Sam Myers would be there, Zuzu Bolin, all these guys. would be hanging out, and Daryl, when he was playing with Ronnie Earl at the time, and he would, whenever he was in town, he would come down and hang out, and so I got to know him, got to sit in and play with him a couple of times, and he when he left when he was still with Ronnie, they played in Dallas, and he got me and he told Ronnie, like, man, you ought to get these two Denton guys up to play guitar, and Ronnie did, and that was another scary moment. You got Ronnie Earl like just breathing down your throat and like playing the most insane great guitar. But yeah, so from there I was talking to Daryl, and then I think he left Ronnie's band there soon after, and he called me and goes, "Hey, are you interested in doing this?" And starting a band with me, and I'm like, "Wow, yeah, totally." So, and that was kind of in the middle of all this. I was still in Dallas living, when I started doing that, and man, I'd go out with Daryl for half the year. Like we'd go all over the place. I went to Europe the first time with him. All over the States, Canada. I mean, so it was a great thing. That was my first record I was, a part of, that was released. Yeah, Texas Heat. Yep. Those guys are still really great friends of mine. Steve Gomes, Rob Stupka. We have the drummer that played with Robert Cray, David Olson, early on that first record, and then we had Rob on the rest of them. But
Would you be able to go back in time and think about what your goal might have been at that point? What your dream might have been?
it wasn't really. I didn't really. I just was going with it. I didn't really think of a goal, or I think I was probably just drinking beer and playing gigs
I mean, was
and
Daryl the first time you actually toured?
yep,
And I should
I
say
would
it's
say so.
Daryl
Yeah.
Newlish, just in case people
Hmm.
don't know.
Yeah.
But that was your first taste of touring.
Yep. Yeah. Actually, I had gone out with Hook. He's a harmonica player that was living down here at the time. I went to California and all the way back with him, but that was it. That one run. But then after that, yeah, Daryl was. We went to Europe a couple times, went all over. Yeah. So
And that was, I
definitely.
mean, I had the pleasure of seeing that band, you with Daryl and Steve and Rob, and
Yeah,
that was a killer band.
it was for
Just
sure.
like a ridiculously amazing band, which
Yeah.
wound up to become the Severn studio session
Yep.
musicians.
Yep.
And tell me about that experience. And I mean, obviously you're assigned to Severn, and that's probably the connection. But
Yeah.
what did that teach you as a musician?
Oh man, a lot. Those guys brought in all these great singers. Lou Pride.
Yeah.
And I mean, a whole bunch of guys. Uh, a lot of it was great. Just diving more into the soul music side of it. Really, that kind of what it kind of evolved into more of. Those guys, Steve and Daryl, are way into that stuff. And then when we got over there to Severn, it was like, they really dove even further in, so I learned it was like a nice school of diving into all that, especially the rhythm stuff, rhythm, backing up different singers,
I presume that would have changed your playing.
It did. It really did. Yeah, you definitely kind of, it's like a different, and it's something I'm really glad I've got in my, I can do that you can go into that role. Go, okay, I'm gonna be the cool, funky soul guitar, rhythm guitar guy over here, you know. And
And around the same time, or early on, you did a solo album.
yep,
Tell me about the pursuit of a solo career. Was it a pursuit of a solo career, or was it just something you wanted to do and get down on tape? And
well, there's a couple things we did when I was in Dallas. I met this guy named Chuck Nevitt, and him and a buddy of his, Scotty Ferris, would were always on the scene hanging out. Like they invited us to a rehearsal with this guy Zuzu Bolin. I remember when we were kids, and those guys were always big supporters of me and Jay and Paul, like Mike. We would like, they were always out, but they'd always invite us to other cool things, in Dallas we didn't know about. But Chuck started this label called the Dallas Blues Society, record label, and he put out a Zuzu Bolin album. He put out a whole bunch of cool records, and he put us in the studio first. He was like, "Man, let's go do this thing." It was called Return of the Funky Worm. I don't know if you've heard that one ever. It's kind of a cool. And then that's the one I did after it. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
oh,
that's
that's
the
a yeah.
second one.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But that guy made both of those happen. We were just hanging out, and he'd go, "Here, man, I'll pay for it. I'll put you in the studio. I'll put it out. Like you guys go do something."
What was that experience like to become like? What was your first experience in the studio like?
It's funny. You learn. I remember doing that first Daryl record. It was I wasn't that comfortable. I didn't know the ins and outs. Like a lot of times they'll just put your amp in a closet down the hallway, and you're going, man, that's not really how I sound, or I'm not feeling it like I do when I'm at that club over there and I'm crank my amp up and can hear, can feel it differently. So you learn how to communicate better. Like, with the engineer or somebody going, hey, I need this to, be happening to really do my thing. But I remember not, I was young. I think I was 19 when we made that Daryl record and at the first one, the Texas Heat. And I didn't really know how to communicate that. It was just kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, that's cool. I'll roll with this.
So how do you learn that? How do you become more comfortable in the studio?
I'm still learning it. I'm still trying to figure that out. I think, like even being over there yesterday, it's like he's still kind of going, it's never ending, you know.
Well, that
But I think
surprises me because I mean, being part of the Severn recording team, you did a lot
yeah,
of albums.
yeah, yeah. And you find different little ways, different techniques or different ways, like there's sometimes where, to get the sound you want, you can find, like one thing's if you're overdubbing your solo later, you can crank it up in a bigger rim, and just try to get the sound that makes you feel comfortable. But it is weird. It's always changing. It's like you never really have it down. Like it's always, it's like you write a song and you think it's going to get in the studio and, oh, I got it all figured out. And then when you get in there, it's like, oh, wait, this isn't working the way I thought it would. Like you get these guys and the recording. And so it's never ending.
So, and then a number of years ago, I got a chance to see you in Boston. I don't know if you remember this gig. It was, I believe, at the Regent Theater,
Oh, wow.
and it was from the Boston Blues Society or Blues Festival. Greg Sarnia had put it on. Hubert Sumlin was there.
Oh, I remember
David
that
Maxwell,
now. Yeah.
and I don't know if it was the first time, but it was one of the earlier times of you singing.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if you
Dang.
remember that.
I don't remember that. So
Because I remember we talking,
I'm
and you
afraid to
were,
know what it might have been like.
no, I know you were a little bit nervous about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But now you're
Wow.
singing a lot more, right? Like you,
I have been. I have been, and that's slowly getting. I'm starting to feel comfortable now. When was that? You're talking about 30
wow.
years ago,
No,
maybe
no, no. It wasn't
25,
30. Maybe, yeah, maybe
20.
25. Yeah.
Wow.
No, no, no. It can't be.
I don't even remember that.
2006, maybe somewhere around there.
Okay.
So,
Okay, not bad.
yeah.
Wow. Yeah, because I've tried, but I never really, until the last probably 2 years, put a real healthy focus on it. I think before I might drink a bunch of beer and go, yeah, I'm going to try it. I'm going to sing one. But I didn't really, it doesn't come natural. Like some people are naturally, you know, great singers. They're 10 and they can do that. So you got to really find what you can do and what you can't do, you
Well,
know?
I mean, and I hate to call this a disadvantage, but the other disadvantage you had is like you were working and have continue to work with some of the greatest blues singers.
Yeah.
When you talk about Kim
Yep.
Wilson and Daryl
Yeah.
Newlish and Lou Pride,
Yeah.
and like it's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yep. Yep. It does. The standards are really high, so yeah, when you're younger, I'm going, I'm not going to try to do that. I'm not going to get up there after Daryl and try to sing a song. Like, it'd be so dumb. But, now it's like I do want to be more, and that kind of segs into what you're talking about earlier about when I left the T-Birds, for the last couple of years. me and my brother started this Wednesday residency here in town, and just said we're gonna play every week, and we'll split the night, half and half of running the band, and which neither one of us had really done. So it's been great. It's been great to like every week go in and after 2 years I'm going, okay, I'm getting there, you know.
So that conjures up a few questions. One is, what's it like playing with your brother? And especially when you started together, like literally started together. Day one, you
Yeah.
were both playing for the first time together. To now, I mean, you were in the Thunderbirds together. The Moeller brothers are playing and touring together. What is it like to play with your brother versus playing with another drummer?
Well, we definitely have a thing where we play a certain way together that's, that you don't do with anyone else. I think he knows where I'm going to go, and vice versa, when you're playing. It's funny, we're pretty much exactly the same as we were when we were 13. I mean, I'm the same, I am, and I know he's definitely the same, but I remember, back when we were kids, me and him and Paul would set up in the garage and start playing, and maybe when we were playing with Pops Carter, and we would rehearse, and I remember like, you know, not liking something he was doing, and like maybe stomping my foot or giving him the eye, like come on, man. And my brother, if you knew him, he doesn't take to those kind of things real kindly, and he still doesn't. And he gave me this look, and I'm like, okay, I'm not doing that anymore. that's that's not gonna fly with him. But we totally. I mean, we love playing together, and still do.
And if I'm not mistaken, you've done a lot of recording projects together with other people.
We have, yeah, we have. We do. He's been playing with a lot of people, in the last couple of years. He's been with this guy Charlie Crockett. I don't know if you heard. He's like more country, but they've been doing that. I played on a couple of songs on one of his records, but I think it's coming out soon. And we got a thing we're doing in February with a buddy of mine from Belgium. This guy Mark T, who's like really great singer, guitar player, musician. So yeah, we always are doing stuff together, and we've got like two records in the can that we're trying to figure out how to put out.
Well, that's
Just
difficult now,
Moeller
right?
Brothers. It is.
So one question would be, what motivates you to record? Is it just to have something captured? Is it to sell? Is it to get gigs?
I think all of the above. We both are do so much different stuff, and it gets hard. Like in the T-Birds, like we've got this one record. It's probably been done for 10 years, and yeah, and it's you run around and you get really busy with the T-Birds next year, and then you're like, okay, we still got to figure out how to put that out, and then the next year comes, and oh, I'm swamped, until December, and it just keeps rolling over. But I think he said he's got a guy that might want to put it out here pretty soon. So
and you
I'm
just
hoping we
played
get that out.
Lucerne Festival as the Moeller
Yeah.
Brothers, right?
Yep. Yeah, that went great. That was
Yeah,
great. We did our own show, and then we backed up this guy Stan Mosley, who's another great singer.
that you've
I don't
recorded
know. Have you?
with.
Yep. Yeah. Check out that record. You'll like it. He's like soul,
Yeah, yeah.
great soul singer. You
I
know.
actually did for this interview because I want to see what you guys are doing.
Oh, cool. And then we
Um,
played with this kid, Mac McDonald. I don't know if you've heard him yet. Phenomenal. Great. It's like 22-year-old kid, like sings great, plays great.
what does he play?
He
Guitar?
plays guitar. He plays everything. Plays drums. He plays piano. Plays organ. I mean, you'll hear about him for sure.
Okay,
Yeah,
last time you told me that was,
yeah.
I think 2010. I said, what's the next big thing? And he said Gary Clark Jr. Remember that?
There you go. Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
He's done okay.
He's done pretty good for himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So you wind up joining the T-Birds, which was the last time I saw you, which was
Oh
probably like
wow.
10 years, more than 10 years ago. And
Yeah.
we had a quick conversation about that. But tell me about how that happened.
I had way back in Austin, way back when Kid Ramos was in the band with the T-Birds. Uh, I was at Antone's one night, and I've known Kim forever. Just hanging out at Antone's and from Clifford, and I ran into Kim like random night at Antone's, and he said, "Hey man, I might need you for some gigs," and I'm like, "Oh man, yes." And I said, "Well, here's my number. Let me know." And in the music business, you always hear things come up, and until you're actually doing it, you know, we'll see.
Is
So
that
I
the
went,
attitude?
okay,
I mean,
well,
is that the reality that you just don't get excited about anything until it actually
well, you
happens?
you do get excited, but you gotta be careful,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you get too excited, and then you know someone says, "Oh man, I'm gonna get you on this record with whoever," and what, and then it never happens. But Kim was like, "Yeah, I might need you. You know, here's my number. Let me get yours." And I was working at a restaurant at that time, like during the day. I've done that off and on for 20 whatever years, bartended or whatever I got to do, and I'll never forget. I mean, this is like before cell phones, where we all have now. But I was working at that restaurant, and I'd forgotten about this conversation with Kim, really. And there, all of a sudden, I get a phone call up there.
So this some time has passed.
Yeah, it's probably like 3 months later or something, and
Okay.
I'm just like, "Oh yeah, I guess that ain't happening." And I guess they called my house, the number I gave them, the home phone, and they said, "Oh, he's at work," and they said, "Well, man, we really need to talk to him." And so I'm at work. I get a phone call, and it's the T-Birds manager at the time. And he's like, "Johnny, Kid Ramos's wife is pregnant, and she went into labor just now. So Kid's leaving, and we need somebody like tonight." And I'm like, "Where are you?" And they go, "New York City." And they go, "Can you come to New York?" And I'm like, "Yeah, uh, yeah. Well, oh crap, I better start learning these songs." And it turned out they couldn't get me there that night. It was too, they just couldn't get a flight that short notice. They said, "Well, hey, we're going to fly you to Buffalo tomorrow." And that was my first gig. I played at Buffalo, like at the Six Flags there, like theme park thing. And I flew in the next day and played, and then I flew in to California and played another show the next day. And then Kid showed up there, and resumed, jumped back in with the band from there. But I did those two shows, and it went good. Kim was like, "Oh man, you great job, thanks." And I was like, "Wow, that was cool." And then years later, my brother was in the band. He was buddies with Nick and Ronnie James and Kirk Fletcher, and they needed a drummer, so Jay got in the band, and he'd been in the band for maybe a year or two. And I was hanging out at my brother's house here one afternoon, and the T-Birds had came up with like a last minute weekend show in Las Vegas, and Nick Curran had another gig booked already, but he couldn't get out of it. It was like a big reunion tour of a band that he used to be in, and he was like, "I can't do it. I can't get out of what I got here." So uh, the manager calls my brother's house and goes, "What's your brother doing this weekend?" And Jay goes, "Let me ask him." And I was literally there. He goes, "What are you doing this coming weekend?" I'm like, "Nothing." He goes, "You want to go to Las Vegas?" I'm like, "Yeah, hell yeah." So
Okay, so
that was the second one.
when that happens, when you get this call and you say, "Can you come up to Buffalo and do the T-Bird show?" Like how much obviously there's not enough time to prepare
Yeah,
and you don't actually get a chance to rehearse with the band, maybe at sound check, but that's about
yeah,
it.
exactly.
And
Yep,
then they give you a song list and maybe a tape to listen to.
yeah, yeah. Pretty
And
much,
how
yeah.
comfortable are you when you get step on the stage that night?
Yeah, you're kind of scared maybe, but I grew up knowing those songs and grew up. That was my favorite band. You know, my mom took us to see the T-Birds in '85. You know, I still remember. And in Fort Worth. So I've been such a fan, but it is weird because some things are different. You know the songs, but they have a different part they do now, or a different, you know, thing. But yeah, you just kind of listen and try to be, attuned to what's happening.
How long does it take for you to get used to that band? How long? I mean, obviously, at one point or another, they said you're in the band.
Yeah,
How long does
yeah,
it take for you to go, okay, now I feel like I'm in the band, not the newcomer?
yeah. Maybe a couple of years. Maybe you
Wow.
know, yeah. I mean, to get comfortable, it's like funny. Like I've been in so many different versions of the band that, like, even coming back now this year, it's cool. It's like it's fun. It's a different every time. It's a different group of guys. It's a whole different kind of thing that everyone brings. So you kind of reinvent that, get used to it all again.
Okay, so before you came back, you left.
Yeah,
What was
yeah.
that like?
I think it was a perfect time because I'd been in the band for 14 years, through a couple different incarnations, and uh, Kim called and he wanted to try. He goes, man, I want to try something new, And I was like, I just played my Wednesday gig with my brother over there, and I was like, man, it's all good because I want to do some new stuff too, do something different. And I said, man, me and you are great, Kim. Like I've been with you for 14 years, you know, we're good. I said, if you need me down the road, you know, holler, but and all the best, for what you need to do. So that was good. So then I started doing the thing on with my brother and kind of fronting a band more and trying to wrap my head around that. And yeah, playing with around Austin. There's so many things going on. I was playing with Marsha Ball. I still play with her. And this Guy Forsyth. I played with this guy Mike Barfield all the time. Like he's my partner going way back.
This is more of a funk band, right?
Yep, yep. Kind of a funk. It's very rootsy, but it's mainly funk, kind of funky inspired thing, dance music, kind of. So
One of
it's a
my
lot of fun.
one of my goals is to come to the Continental Club and see your band.
Oh, you got to come see that. You'll love it. It's really a lot of fun.
Okay, so
Yeah.
then you get a call from I don't know who, the manager from Kim, saying we needed you to come back.
Yeah.
What does
Yeah.
that
The
feel like?
it was good, and it was. He called earlier this year and just said, "Hey, we've got like pretty busy July, and and the rest of the year's pretty good too." He said, "You want to jump back in?" And I was like, looked at my calendar and went, "Oh, that fits. I can do that." So it felt great. It feels good, and like I said, I've been in a couple different versions of the band, and I love them all. Like it's like all these guys are all my buddies, and I didn't know any of these guys, this time. So and instantly, it's like I love these guys. Bob Welsh is like he's like my soul brother that I never knew. So like we're 5 days apart, like the same year. He's born 5 days. His birthday's 5 days after mine. And it's like funny. I start playing and going, man, this guy, like, I connect with him instantly. Like I can, we're coming from the same place, we're the same age. He was probably doing the same thing I was the whole what, coming up,
Yeah, yeah.
but at a different place, a different location, on the West Coast, and we have a lot of mutual friends, but we never really had worked together, or really known each other. Really, I'd met him a few times, but just in passing, here and there. And Rudy Pet Shower on drums, Steve Kirsty on bass. Those guys, they're all fantastic. So
So how crazy is it? I mean, there have been a number of interviews I've done when something like this has happened, but I just find it so fascinating that you get into music, you get into playing the guitar, you become a fan of a band, and one of them is the Fabulous Thunderbirds. And a
yeah,
number of years later, there you are, one of the players in that band. It's
I
crazy.
can't. It is crazy. It it's funny. So yeah, like I tell Kim that story about my mom taking me to see him when I was 15, and he's like, "Don't say that. Don't tell me that." But I'm like, man, I mean, it blew my mind. It I already had the records, but then seeing them, and you had to think. if you would have told me, 15-year-old me, like one day you're going to be in that band playing with that guy, all the time. And it's funny with Jimmy too. Like he plays at the bar I was telling you my wife used to have the trailer at, and I play there all the time. That's where I play
Sorry, we
every
should
Wednesday.
clarify that the trailer was a restaurant or
Yeah, he's at a food trailer.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good thing to clarify. And the I play there every Wednesday at Sea Boys Heart and Soul Club, and Jimmy plays there every Friday and Saturday when he's off. And so I used to live like in the condo I lived in right behind the club. Like you could throw a rock, literally, and hit the club. And I remember thinking I'd come in from the grocery store and park my car, and I could hear Jimmy playing with Mike Flanagan, my buddy from way back, and I can hear him playing. I'm parking the car, and I'm going, man, if you would have told me when I was 14, one day you're going to live right by there, you're going to park your car and go to the grocery store and come back and hear him playing, and you won't even go in. You know what I mean? I would have been like, no, dude, you're crazy. You'll be there every night. I just grab my groceries and I'm like, man, it's sounding good tonight. Go on in.
So the other story I know about you, and I don't know if you told me about this, but at one point you tried out for the Red Hot Chili Peppers,
I did.
and made it to the
I made it
final.
to the final round,
Yeah,
I guess.
tell me about
Yeah.
that.
Well, Paul Size was in that band, the Red Devils, and Rick Rubin produced their only record they put out. And so he was living in LA, and I loved that band. I was like a big fan of John Frusciante, the guitar player that left,
Hmm.
and
And came back.
came back and left and came back, and he uh Paul goes, hey, they're having these auditions. Why don't you come out here and hang out with me and go check it out? And I'm like, okay, well, when you're in your early 20s and you're like, I'll scrape together some money and drive out there and we'll see. Yeah. So I did. I go there and I go to the audition, and there's like a line of like 300 guitar players, like around the block of this like rehearsal complex. And I'm like, oh my God, okay, I get in line. And it's funny, like guys are out there like drinking like beer and whiskey and smoking and like it was a party almost. Like, yeah, I'm gonna go rock out with the Chili Peppers.
And do you actually
And
play with the Chili Peppers at that point?
well, so the first day, I mean, I waited in line probably 5 hours.
Wow.
You finally get in there, and I'll never forget the guy in front of me was the guy like he's like drinking and making a party of it. He literally went in the door and came right back out like 4 minutes later. He goes, man, I plugged it in. They go, okay, that'll be good. And it was like these buddies of theirs, like maybe their road tour manager, or they're some guys they trusted
Right.
to weed through all the riffraff. And so I go in there and they go, yeah, man, here's an amp, plug in, and we jammed for like 5 minutes.
Is it, and what is it? Did they tell you a song or are you just jamming?
I think it was just jammed. Like they
Oh,
just started playing, and it was like, let's just play. And I played, and it went pretty good. And we got done, and this is on a Friday, and I'm already broke and like going, what am I doing out here? I can't believe I'm doing this. And I've spent the whole day here. I get in line, and these guys are like their buddies, and I play, and they go, well, hey, sounded really good. If you want, come back Monday, and you can play with the band. And I'm like, whoa, wow, okay, cool. So I come back Monday, and there's three guys at the door in front of me. I'm like, oh my God. So we went from 300 to maybe it was 1,000. I don't know. It was so big. It seemed like it like wrapped around the off into the neighborhood, so many people. But so there's like two or three guys there. They go in, come out, and I go in, and there's the band. There's Flea and Chad Smith, the drummer. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening, And I didn't use pedals or anything back then. I that kind of I had never really gotten into that kind of world. And there's like this big amplifier and pedals, and they go, here, man, plug in and let's play. And I'm like, oh man, okay. I plug in, and we probably jammed for like 30 minutes. And Flea would just change the groove. Like he'd go fast and slow and medium, like funky, all kinds of grooves. And I just tried to keep up. I mean, it was just like, oh my god. And and it was Flea was very Flea, like you see him, like he was exactly like you'd expect. And Chad was the way he was. He was cool. Like when we got finished, he goes, "Man, you sound really good. Where are you from?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm shaking." And then Anthony, the singer, came out, and he had his dog with him. He came out of a room and goes, "Yeah, man, hey, I would have came and rocked out with y'all, but I got my dog, and he's real sensitive." And it was like very rock star, like stuff. And I'm like, "Oh my god!" And I'll never forget. I got in the car at the time when we left there, and I just threw up. I was so like from the
Wow.
nerves and the whole thing of it. I was just like, "Oh my god, I think I'm gonna be sick. Like this is too much." And but yeah, that was that. I'm glad I did it.
What did you
It
learn
was
from that experience?
I don't know. I don't know what just that's a whole different world. I had never been in that before, like playing in blues bands and soul bands, and you know, it was just a whole different thing. I would love to do that. I would love to do that. I've auditioned for two bands ever, and that was one of them. The other one was the Black Crows.
Really?
Uh, yeah. So
Wow.
yeah.
And what was
So
that like?
it was
Same?
cool. It was yeah, same kind of like whoa boy, like when you play in blues bands or soul bands or I mean I like to play. I know I play loud at times, and that world you got people going, hey man, can you come down a little bit? We, and over there in that world they're going. I'll never forget Chris Robinson looked at me and goes, hey man, you can turn up quite a bit, and I'm like, whoa, okay, cool.
And was it
But
like
they're man, they're great.
was it a free for all once again? Like was it
No, no, that was totally different. I knew what I was supposed to do, and they had a set list, know all these songs, and but it was kind of weird. I didn't know it was for the Black Crows per se. It was kind of hush hush what it exactly was. It
right?
was before they reunited this last time here in the last couple of years, and so I didn't know which parts really. Rich Robinson, he plays kind of the meat and potatoes. Like he makes up all those riffs, and it's the main part of the songs. So I was kind of like, I probably should know more of that. I mean, I should wrap my head around that probably to begin with, so I really know these songs better. And sure enough, I didn't know he was going to be there really.
So you
And
learned
so then
his
we get
part.
there exactly, and like an hour before the audition started, the drummer who had played with Chris a long time, me and him are having breakfast together, and he goes, "Yeah, man, it's so crazy. This we're doing this thing." And I go, "What do you mean?" And I go, "Don't you play with you're in the band already with Chris?" And he goes, "No, but this is the Black Crows." And I'm like, "You mean like Rich and Chris both?" Like, oh shit. And I'm like ran to my room and like, wrong, I did the wrong thing.
Wow.
But it was great. They were great. They were, you know, so cool. I went and saw them two times. They've come back through town, and those guys are great guys. And yeah, that was a lot more organized and a lot more. Besides my own part of not knowing what to do.
But I can picture you in either one of those bands. Like you're kind of playing. Like to me, it makes total sense that you would have tried out for both of those bands.
Yeah, well, thanks. I love both of those bands actually. So it was an honor to jump in even for a minute. You know,
So and then you started working with Marsha Ball. How did that come about?
well, it was like when I left the T-Birds. Her guitar player at the time, who'd been with her for many years, Mike, he called and goes, "Hey, I I think I'm gonna slow down working with Marsha." He'd moved back to California, and he said, "Would you be interested she's looking for somebody kind of probably more around Austin that can do a lot of those." And I think he just didn't want to fly in for, like one-offs here and there. And so I was like, yeah, I'd love to. And I've known her forever. I've never played with her. I've known her just from being on the same scene here. And yeah, so Mike Shermer was like, well, I think you'd be perfect. If you want to do it, I'll tell her to call you. And I was like, yeah, please do. So yeah, she called and I went and played with her for a while. And she goes, yeah, if you want, all these gigs are yours if you want them. And I was like, oh, definitely. So it's been great. She's like a total class act. She's great at, what she does. And she's a great person, to work with and to know. And it's been a great learning experience. Even like, what you should and shouldn't do, like being a band leader. She's really on top of it. She's always wants to work up new songs, always, always up for rehearsing and, so it's been a great experience.
Well, I think it speaks to who you are and what you bring to the table that all these people want to work with you.
Well, I'm glad to be working, so it's a good thing.
So I presume next year is going to be a busy year with the T-Birds.
I think it is. Yeah, this record's supposed to come out, and it's sounding great. I think they've got 4 songs mixed, and they sound really good. I'm really excited about it.
And does that change your focus completely? Like, I mean, do you prefer? I mean, I guess it's a higher profile gig to be working with the T-Birds and Marsha.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
do you prefer that and having to tour and have to deal with all that versus, trying to work on your own stuff in Austin and build that?
It's kind of a good dose of both. Like it's nice to have that. It's nice to look at my calendar with the T-Birds or Marsha or whoever and go, okay, I got that 2 weeks. Boom, I'm good there. But yeah, definitely when you get back, it's always good. Like we're pretty slow for the next month here. So it's like nice to then jump back into the other world. Go, all right, let's focus on this, the Moeller Brothers stuff that we're doing or Barfield. And I'm lucky to have those things here around Austin that you can jump back into.
Well, hopefully I will see you next year on the road sometime. Like I expect
Man, I
that.
hope so.
It's been like a long, long time.
It has been. We got to get to Canada.
You
somewhere,
have to.
somebody.
Yeah, because the last time was Orangeville, and that was I don't know how many years ago, but that was a long time ago.
What's Orange? Where's that?
I was just outside of Toronto, and that's when I saw.
Is that the beaches thing?
No.
Was that?
No. With the beaches thing we did, or you did with Lou Pride and Daryl.
Lou. Yeah. I'll never forget that. Lou, he made frisbees.
I have one.
And he was awesome. And he's throwing frisbees out, and it was like, oh, that's so cool. I miss Lou.
Oh, what a great voice he had. What a great person he was.
He was, man. I'm trying to see if I can find this Lightning Hopkins album real quick.
Do you do a lot of acoustic stuff?
I don't really. That's a whole different. It's weird. It's a whole different beast. I mean, I got a couple acoustics I play around the house that I like to do, but I've never done anything really on stage.
Wow.
A lot but I did do actually. I went to Spain and Portugal one time with Lazy Lester, and
another character.
We did. Yeah, oh man, he's such a great character. I was thinking about him a lot last week in Lucerne. His wife PK, who's from Finland, she came and showed up last week, and it was really cool because the last time I was there was with him.
Wow.
And Luann Barton, and yeah, but I did do an acoustic tour with him for 2 weeks, all in Spain and Portugal, and just me and him, and it was so fun, so cool. I learned something every day, for sure.
I am sure.
But man, he was so cool.
Yeah, what a great guy. Johnny, thank you so much for doing this. It's been
too
long.
Yeah, Michael, it's so good. It's been way too long. Great to see you.
Great to see you.
Even through the interweb or whatever.
Yeah, come on
But
up.
yeah,
Come up to Canada. We gotta
I'll let you
tell
know.
Kim to say he's got to come up here.
I know. I will. And if anything comes up, I'll for sure let you know.
All right. Well, thank you so much for
Yeah.
doing this. I really appreciate it.
Cool. Cool, brother.
All
Good
right.
to see you.
Take care.
Take care, man. You too.